Everybody, I'm Sigfried Trent, game designer, co-creator of Everyday Heroes, and chief silliness officer of Sig Trent Games. Today I'm going to update you on what's going on with Sig Trent Games here in week 18, offer you a little bit of game design advice, and talk about my life in gaming. All right, let's start with the news for Sig Trent Games, Shotgun Fantasy Talk. That is the big thing that I'm working on. We've got a nice title treatment for our cool cover art that has been finished up recently. You can see that over in our Discord, and I think it's really cool. It's got a bit of an 80s vibe to it, which, kind of when I grew up, so I guess that makes some sense. But the 80s were pretty good for action movies and big, bold titles, and that was the inspiration I had for the kind of title treatment I want. So when we get Shotgun Fantasy in stores, eventually it's going to start as a PDF, but we'll work towards getting it printed. I just want something that will grab people's attention. They'll see it from across the store and they go, "Hey, what's that? That looks cool. Shotgun Fantasy. What that's about?" So you can check that out. Still working on kind of the other title elements that go on there, my name, company logo, that kind of stuff. But we don't really need that for advertising. So far, so good. Also, in the art department, we've got our first look at new character art. So our artist Frank has sent some neat sketches of the 4 iconic characters that we're using to represent the classes that are going to be available in the fantasy play portion of Shotgun Fantasy. So you got your kind of classic fighter, rogue, wizard, and cleric figures. But of course, the way I like to do art orders, they're going to have a little bit of a twist on them. They won't be exactly your prototypical version of each of these things. And each of them is going to have some anachronistic, time traveling sort of item on them. So they're going to be fantasy characters, but each of them will have some modern element that they have gotten from their crossover experience in the shotgun fantasy genre. So those are pretty cool. I like them, especially as a group of characters, imagining them as an adventuring party that gets tossed into the modern world. I think they look pretty cool, or which just have access to some cool modern technology that they're using in the fantasy world. What else is going on? Writing, of course. I hit my writing goal for last week, which is very nice. Just got it done kind of yesterday. I had to work an extra day over at the gift shop, which set my schedule off just a little bit, but not too much. So, meeting my goals. Part of that was working on the Wish spell. And Wish, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the game design advice area, is being recast a little. Now, a lot of the spells are sort of D&D classics. There's fireballs, disguise self, that kind of stuff. Reimagined a little bit using the mechanics that I've got and my own sensibilities. But Wish, I really wanted to go in a really different direction than the way D&D does it, just because of my game design philosophy. And I think the 5th edition version of Wish is not really that great. It's pretty well game balanced, but it's not a lot of fun, I think. So I took a lot of inspiration from, say, like Dragon Ball Z and the way they do wishes with the Dragon Balls and stuff. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but just consider that a preview of things to come. I've almost finished out all the spell lists, so now it's kind of filling in the blanks in the spell list itself. I've got a goal of between like 80 and 100 spells. We'll see how the word count plays out, but I'm going to write 100 spells, and then I may cut some of them out to try and make space, but we'll see how that goes. Just because when I do go to print, I want a certain size, because when you're printing a book, there are certain increments of pages that you want to hit to make it easier to publish and print, right? So we'll need to do that. So it's always good. I try to overwrite my books just a little bit so that when I go to cut them down to size, I just get rid of the weakest material, and then you get the best book possible. And then that material can get saved for later in a more specific context where it makes more sense. And, you get more time to tune it up and work on it. If you think just it's a little weak, could be a little bit better. So that's just kind of part of my writing process. So a little bonus tip there, I guess. What else we got going on? Anne is doing more streaming. I guess that's not directly related to Sig Trent Games, but I consider everything we do kind of part of the overall business strategy. So that's mostly something she's doing for fun, but you never know. It's great to build up an audience of whatever kind. She's streaming the Myst series. So Myst, Uru, Myst 2, Myst 3. I don't know the names of all the games. She's been telling me the stories of these games. Now, I played the earlier versions of those, certainly Myst and Myst 2 back in the day. When they came out on Macintosh, I think is how I originally played them. And, they had many iterations over the years. Cool games. They have really interesting stories. So I ask Anne questions, and she's always got good answers. Because as she's playing them on Twitch, she's reading out all the lore books and everything and going into great detail. So really getting the full experience. And then folks that are tuning in are big Myst fans, and they're helping her with little bits of lore and also helping her through some of the puzzles and stuff. So that's cool. It's a cool reason to play puzzle challenge games on Twitch because you get a lot of audience participation helping you out with stuff, which is always cool. Now, when I did Twitch, I was pretty bad, and I would sort of focus in so much on the game, I wouldn't see what the audience was telling me. And they're desperately trying to tell me how to solve a puzzle, and I'm like, how do I do this? So I don't know. She's much better at handling that than I am. So pretty cool. If you want to check her out, we'll have a link in the show notes for where her Twitch stream URL is and all that good stuff. Evil Geniuses are going through their Return of the Living Dead Kickstarter. Last I saw, it was doing really well, kind of tracking along closely because it's really interesting to me to see how many people sign up for it and what kind of products that they are looking to buy on it. That's all just good marketing information for me. So also I was reviewing all of our older Kickstarters to just kind of track and see how many users bought each one and what the average price of each buy-in was, what kind of products they were most interested in. Maybe not so good for me. A lot of the fans of Everyday Heroes are looking to buy books. So about 2/3 of them want printed books, and I'm not quite ready to get into printed books. It's a big upfront cost, but we'll get there. So it's definitely got to be a goal for mine if we want to hit kind of mainstream and tap into the bulk of Everyday Heroes fans. I'm hoping people are going to be okay with picking up the PDFs to start with and then helping us fund and get ready to move into the book publishing in a more grassroots kind of a way. But we'll see how that goes. Also, I just love to see my books on shelves, so that is just a personal goal as well to get into that point. But to do it, you got to get to the distributors, and as a third-party publisher, the things that sell best are core rule books, and we're not making a core rule book right now, nor could we make a core rule book for Everyday Heroes. That's really the domain of Evil Genius Games. So, we'll see. We'll have to think about that. Now, we can certainly include rules in a book that's Everyday Heroes based, but it can't be a core rule book, so it's just not going to have the same kind of sales. And thus, not the same kind of interest to distributors, but we'll figure it out. Next up, Dreamslayer Studios. Just want to remind everybody that Requiem, Cryptids, and Urban Legends is out there. Now, I don't have any piece of that, just like I don't have any piece of Return of the Living Dead, but I still want to support everybody in the community and let folks know that those products are out there. And, the more interest in everything Everyday Heroes benefits me, benefits them. It's all good. It's a team effort out there. What else we got? Game design tip of the week. I think we're ready for that. That's all the news that was fit to print. So today's discussion topic is breaking your game. So why would you want to break your own game? Well, there's a few different reasons, and they go in a couple different directions. First of all, you want to break your game before you put it on sale in order to find mechanical vulnerabilities so that you can fix them. We're going to go over towards the end here all the ways in which a game can be broken in a bad way, and those are things you definitely want to avoid. And the best way to do that is to find those broken bits. Maybe not create them in the first place, but you're almost always, unless you're really experienced at it, going to create some broken elements in your game. So you need to dig in there and find out what those are. Next up, why would you break your game? Why would you do it intentionally? Well, you want to create some fun. Broken elements in games can just be a lot of fun. They make for really dramatic moments. You're like, oh my God, look at this thing that I managed to do in this game. It's so cool. Glitch videos and stuff for video games are really popular. So are just, I follow a couple channels that just find vulnerabilities in games and exploit the heck out of them just for fun. And speedrunners do the same thing. So there's actually a lot of good secondary fun that can come from breaking games or games that can be broken in various ways. And sometimes the designers have put those things in there intentionally, and sometimes they're an accident. It really just depends. Obviously, glitches and stuff are going to either be accidents or accepted levels of quality control that most players are not going to run into, right? It's okay to have a little few things that the people who know how to find them are going to find them. But you really want to limit those vulnerabilities, right? Unless, of course, like I said, in a strategy game or something, some broken strategies might be very intentional. We'll talk about that in a bit. Finally, you want choices in a game to be meaningful. And if a game is too balanced and everything is effectively the same, so I choose A or B, and I get the same outcome because everything is quote-unquote balanced, it's not very much fun, right? Some choices should be better than other choices, especially in situations where in situation A, choice A is better, in situation B, choice B is better, and then you create an environment where different situations come up and then different choices are rewarded. We've talked about that a little bit before on these designer diaries, but that's a pretty important element. So those are reasons why you should break your game, either to leave those broken things into the game or to try and remove them from the game. So let's talk a little bit about the how of you break your game or how you find these vulnerabilities. So the first is to just play your game like a shark. So even if you write a role-playing game to be all about the storytelling and all about the fun and all that sort of thing, you should try to look at your game like a cunning player, determined to be the most brilliant player ever and find the exploits and loopholes in your game. So try to adopt that mentality, role play, as it were, that kind of player, and look at your game materials from that perspective and try to think, ooh, how can I do that? And we're going to talk a little bit lower about the kinds of things to look for with that mentality, right? But so that's one of the ways to do it. Role play as the worst player ever and try to break your game. Next up, find cunning role players who already have this attitude or are very good at it and get them to break your game. And then, most importantly, listen to them. I remember doing a couple playtests and finding, like, I did Magic and Legends once upon a time, long ago. And I wrote of some broken combos with, I think, Ivory Tower and Library of Alexandria. And the devs kind of wrote me off. No, you don't really understand card economy. We're the game designers. Yeah, well, those were two of the fastest restricted cards at the time in the history of Magic at that point in time. So, yeah, listen to your playtesters, right? Now, they're not always going to be right. You don't need to just like follow their commands, but listen to them and really think about what they're saying and take a good look at it yourself. Second guess your own wisdom. Try things out that they're suggesting and see how it plays out for yourself rather than just imagining it. Next up, make broken stuff. So this is the other half of that is like to have broken elements in your game that are fun. Consider when and where you might want to add them in. And we'll talk a little bit about good game breaks in a bit, but just keep that in mind. The other thing to do is when you are intentionally adding potentially broken elements to your game, you may want to communicate to your players that these elements are potentially broken. This is especially true in a role-playing game because role-playing really involves a kind of cooperation between the game masters and the players to create a good game playing and storytelling experience. And it takes everybody at the table to really make that happen. Now, a great game master can guide players and help them get on the right track, right? But really recalcitrant or troublemaking players can ruin all those plans. So it is a cooperative effort. And as you, the game designer, by flagging out and letting players and game masters know where there are game vulnerabilities in your game and where you intend for them to be there and how they should be used, and where you don't intend for them to be there and how they shouldn't be used, that's pretty important. Now, if you are like you're doing a strategy game and you want there to be hidden strategies that you want people to discover that are very powerful, game breaking is a judgment call there, then you probably don't want to tell people about it because discovering it is the thing that makes people feel brilliant. So leave those there, but don't highlight them and say, hey, here's the best strategy to play my game. That's probably not a great idea. Now, in a role-playing game, sometimes it is a good idea to help players understand how to make effective characters, right? But that's very different than keying them into broken elements. Next is because playtesting never catches everything, sometimes you just got to release your game and people will find the broken elements. And again, the key here is to listen, watch the community boards, see what the strongest players are doing, watch videos where people exploit your game, and you will learn new things that you maybe never thought of. Part of the joy of being a game designer is putting together a set of rules and seeing what the collective mind of players can do with them, and knowing that they're going to come up with ideas and combinations and things that you knew maybe were potentials, but you didn't actually figure out yourself. Because many minds is always more powerful than one mind. All right, so that is how you break or find the breaks in your game. Now let's talk about things that you want to look for. So this is kind of using your mind as a cunning player or cunning game designer to try and see the vulnerabilities and the potential problems. So one is really simple. We're all familiar with it, min-maxing. And if you don't know, min-maxing is when you go, you know what, like I'm just going to have the lowest dexterity and intelligence in the world, but my character will never need those stats or use those stats because I will maximize my strength and just make it so I can do everything in the world with my strength score. Now, Everyday Heroes, as you may have known, leans into that a little bit and basically says, look, if you make a character who's a strong hero and you have a high strength, you're going to be fine. Mechanically, you will be a good character. You don't have to worry about it. And that's a way of making the game more accessible for people. Now, what it doesn't encourage is the min part of the min-maxing. So if strength is something you can rely on, now you are free to assign your other ability scores in whatever way that makes role-playing sense to you and helps make your character feel special as a strong hero. You can make a smart, strong hero, a smart, wise hero, a smart, agile hero, whatever you want as your secondary thing. It's only going to be a benefit to you and not hurt you particularly. So in a way, we make min-maxing unnecessary because we just make the max part kind of on the printed package. Here's what you need to do to be effective. Everything else is up to you and is a role-playing choice. But min-maxing is always the main thing. Look for ways that you can just stack one stat, ignore everything else, and play the game. That's not necessarily bad that min-maxing works in a game, like I said, because of its accessibility, but it's something to look out for when you're trying to break it. If you assume everybody is not going to do that, you are wrong. Lots of people who do it. It's the most known strategy to break games. Next up, multipliers. So if you have math, this is more of a computer game thing because you want to avoid a lot of math in role-playing games. Well, some people don't. Is anything that multiplies. So, you do double damage, triple damage. Now you double your double damage. And if you have stacking multipliers, double, 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 pretty soon you end up with massive numbers that maybe you didn't intend. This especially happens a lot when you've got multiple designers working on something and somebody's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to double the damage? And they write it in, but they didn't realize that somebody else in another book had a thing that doubles the damage, and then another person had the same bright idea, and now you've got double, 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 and you're looking at exponentially massive damage, and it just breaks the game wide open, and it makes things not fun. So watch out for multipliers. Generally don't include them. Or if you do include them in a way that they will never stack with each other. So in Everyday Heroes, for instance, my general guideline is put stuff like that in the classes and don't put it in the multi-class feats. And then there's no way to double it up because you only get one main class. And so you're pretty safe putting slightly broken mechanics in the class. However, if you have a really modular open-ended system like a skill tree or something, you have to be super careful not to have too many multipliers or things go crazy. Same thing goes with just very strong bonuses that stack infinitely. And we call these like uncapped modifiers. So if there's no limit to how many times you can get +2 on your attack bonus, pretty soon the attack bonus can be bigger than the dice roll, and then the dice don't matter anymore, and you take away the dice drama, which we talked about in the last episode. So you really want ways to limit how many flat modifiers can be stacked up on top of each other as possible. Now, like 3rd edition did that by having types, stacked types, but then the game just became try to find as many different bonus types as possible so that you can stack them. 5e tries to do away with that by having advantage and disadvantage, which are non-stacking mechanics, and to limit the number of flat bonuses, and we do that in Everyday Heroes as well. It's a pretty good way. Now, we do have some flat bonuses, but I always had to warn designers, look, you can't just sort of offer those willy-nilly. You need to be really thoughtful about when you offer them and look at all the other products and see what kind of bonuses are on offer and what areas of the mechanics they're there so that you can't overstack and blow open the dice window, because then you lose the functionality of dice in the game, and that is the heart of a D20 system, is the roll a D20 and see a high number is good and low number is bad. And if you just ignore that, then you have a problem. I was playing some D&D in order to test out stuff for Shotgun Fantasy, and that's still a problem that 5e has under the base rules. There's so many supplements now. We had a 3rd level bard in the character. He cannot roll a skill check below 15. Right, it's not really possible for him and the skills that he's skilled at, and he's good in quite a few of them, to get any result lower than a 15, and it just takes out the drama of any encounter having to do with a social interaction. So that's something you want to avoid because it's kind of broken. All right, next up, removing chance. And it's kind of related. Stacking modifiers is another way to remove chance, but you get something like the Magic Missile spell, which doesn't have an attack roll. It doesn't have a saving throw to resist. It automatically does damage. That's not necessarily bad in itself. It's nice to have a mechanic that does that, but there needs to be a trade-off of it does low damage. So if you find in your game lots of ways to stack up damage on a Magic Missile, it could just become the best spell in the game because it always works and it always does a ton of damage, etc., etc. So again, you are making something that breaks the basic fundamental concept at the heart of the game mechanics, and in D20 that is that a dice roll has a random impact of good or bad fortune, and that those good or bad outcomes are exciting moments in storytelling. and you then circumvent it in specific ways, you might be hurting your overall game. Now, we definitely do that in Everyday Heroes. There was an interesting discussion on the forums about smart heroes and how they circumvent skill checks often. And that is by design, many of their plans are designed to be always successful super genius plans, because you're a super genius, you don't think things up to chance. That is to get a specific play feel, but it is a valid argument that it circumvents one of the core mechanics of the game. And if you really want players to struggle with skill challenges, smart heroes just break that dynamic for you, right? So, yeah, it's something to watch out for and to be very thoughtful about when you're going to do it. All right, so let's talk about good game breaks, ways that breaking your game can be beneficial and why. So first is if a game break concludes the game or the story. In a role-playing game, the story is the game to some degree. You could say the combat's the game. It's 50-50. But if a really powerful ability is going to secure victory in combat, or it's going to resolve the story in a really cool way, and then that becomes the end of that scene, that combat, that story, then that's really not a problem. You want things to come to a resolution. A really great example of this is in a lot of strategy games where you have engine building systems. A lot of card games are like this. Eventually, you get to a point where your game engine is broken and it's undefeatable, and that's when you win. And that's great. Now, if you get the broken, undefeatable engine and you have to play for another 3 hours, it's going to be really boring. But if it's the conclusion, the mighty achievement that you've done, that is perfectly awesome. That is a great way to break end the game. It's same thing with storytelling. We're going to get a little bit more of that in my example, so I'll leave that for now. Move on. It creates exciting stories. So whenever, like when I used to play Magic the Gathering and you make a new deck and it's got a broken abusive combo in it, it's a great story to tell everybody. You're really excited that you come up with this clever thing, and then you're like, oh, I did it at a tournament. Maybe it's something that's hard to achieve, but then once you get it, it wins in a spectacular fashion. That's just great fun. It's a dramatic moment. It makes for good storytelling. People love that. It's even better in a role-playing game. My character was immortal for a short period of time, and so I did all these crazy things that I could never have done otherwise. That's good times. Like in Highlander, the characters are effectively immortal, and I give the advice to the game master, let them enjoy their immortality a little bit. Let them abuse it, because that's part of the fantasy of playing an immortal, right? Then challenge them and make them fear that they're going to lose their head, right? And up the stakes. So it's good to have game-breaking moments sometimes. Next up is that you have natural counters. And so if you have a game-breaking combo that is going to be pretty obvious to players and is going to be used, there should be ways to disrupt it. So you can have a spell that's really powerful, but it has a specific counter. For instance, in D&D, Magic Missile, which is very useful, you can use the shield spell specifically blocks Magic Missile. Why is that? Because you need some way to stop the otherwise unstoppable spell. If the players start to abuse it, well, the bad guys can start using shield a lot, right? That may feel a little cheesy. It can lead to certain kinds of like very black and white play, which isn't so great, but at least there's an outlet there. Ideally, there are multiple ways to disrupt a particularly powerful combo or strategy, so that everybody at the table, if it's player versus player or player versus environment, like a role-playing game, then you're going to have a way to still enjoy the drama of the very powerful, quote-unquote, broken combo, but also ways to disrupt it and tools to deal with it. Finally, you want it to take work to achieve. If you're going to intentionally put something broken in your game, you do want it to take effort to achieve it, because then you feel like your efforts are being rewarded. The harder the effort, the bigger the reward. That is a big key driver in MMO play or any kind of online forever game, like a lot of the gacha games and stuff. You give hardworking players broken stuff and they feel like gods. And then you just make more powerful monsters and the cycle goes on and on. But specifically, if you give people broken stuff and they didn't feel like they had to earn it in any particular way, some people still enjoy that. But for the most part, people don't like it. You get the pay to win attitude, and it's just not so great. So try to avoid that. All right, bad game breaks. Well, it kind of led naturally into that. It's usually something you talk about when you're talking about game breaking stuff. So if a break or a problem, an overpowered strategy in the game is going to make gameplay trivial, especially like through long periods of time, then it's no good. That's why you want your game breaking stuff to happen at the end of the game, because after that, playing the game is just sort of not very fun, not very rewarding, not very challenging, etc. So if a game breaking thing still requires you to constantly be interacting to like maintain it against attacks and things, that's not necessarily so bad because you're still playing a game. You're still interacting back and forth, trying to maintain the advantage that you have. But if it makes it trivial and nothing can ever challenge you and you're unassailable, then well, that's just naturally when you should stop playing, to be honest. Um, if the break takes fun away from other players, that's bad. This is a big problem you get into MMOs. You want that power fantasy. Breaking the game gives people a lot of rewards, but if there's PvP elements, it completely ruins the PvP play. And then everybody has to play the same thing in order to be competitive, and it's just really boring. Or people refuse to be boring and they just get pasted every week and they have no fun. Then it completely ruins everything. So, in a game with PvE and PvP, life is hard as a game designer. They're two different, very different experiences to try and balance and create gameplay for. Trying to do them both at the same time is incredibly difficult. You end up having to make the PvP mode and the PvE modes be essentially different, connected in that they could each build advantages for each other, but different in the basic functionality of how gameplay works. And that's usually you have to do this bi-model in order to make those things work, because in one style, breaking the game is great and fun, and the other style, breaking the game is almost always terrible. So don't have game-breaking bugs in PvP if you can help it. It when it takes over the experience of the game, if playing the game becomes only about doing the game-breaking activity, then you've probably ruined your game, because everything else in the game will get ignored. Everyone will just seek that one activity, and then it's completely pointless. So why engage in that other material, right? That's what happens. You might say as a game designer, because it's fun, maybe, but now people get obsessed over winning and doing the thing that the game incentivizes you to do. That's very natural. So don't anticipate people will just choose fun in all occasions. Next up, if it's too easy to discover way game breaks, or it's just too easy to do it, then that really takes the fun out of it. Oh, well, I just push this button and I win. It's the I win button. That's just boring. Nobody really likes it. Like, it's not a satisfying experience, so don't do that. If you're going to have game breaks, make them a challenge in order to achieve. Finally, if the game break is core to the experience. So what I mean is, if in normally playing the game you break the game in a way that's not intended, this is very problematic to fix, is the problem with that. Because in order to fix the game break, you have to change the whole game. That's death of a game right there. That is just how games die. So any game breaking elements you have, especially the ones you intentionally put in, kind of need to be at the fringes of the game and not connected to the essential core mechanics of play, or it just ruins everything. Okay, so let's talk about my example real quick, and that is the Wish spell that I mentioned earlier when I was talking about what's going on with Sigfried Trent games. So I wanted to remake the Wish spell, and here's some things that I don't like about the 5e implementation. Doesn't mean 5e is bad or anything like that. It's just what I don't like. The Wish spell is balanced to be cast as a 9th level spell. It is a spell that a wizard can get or a cleric can get, and they can cast it whenever they have it memorized. You know, get a lot of 9th level spells, and it's only a high level play, but still it's there. You could get a scroll of it and cast it at a lower level, theoretically. It does a number of different very specific mechanical things, like it can reproduce any particular given spell, or it can give you 2,500 or 25,000 gold pieces worth of value in items, and raise stats by a certain amount, and a bunch of other very specific things. Basically, things a normal high-level spell might be able to do just fine. And then it kind of has a little caveat at the end and says, well, you can do some other stuff with it, but the game master may kind of screw you over, or you might not get what you want, or et cetera, and that's fine. It's kind of going, yeah, you could also do other stuff. But the main focus is just on what it can do mechanically, and it is mechanically designed to be balanced with high-level play in 5e. And frankly, it's pretty boring. If you think about the really cool stories involving people casting wishes or getting wishes, they wish for outrageous, amazing things. And it is a storytelling exercise in what would happen if you could have anything you want. What would be the moral repercussions of that, et cetera, et cetera. And in a show like Dragon Ball Z, which is one I'm familiar with that has a lot of wishing in it, and I've watched a fair number of episodes, Wishing is the culminating point of a big story arc. It is a really important moment. What the characters are going to wish for is something that you kind of think about and consider as a expression of a character's personality and as a launching point for the next set of stories that you're going to tell. So to me, that is the ultimate, maybe not the ultimate, but a very good expression of how wishes can be used in role playing and in storytelling. And that's what I want to capture instead of it's mechanically balanced. So I came up with an idea when we were working on Everyday Arcana at Evil Genius Games of legendary spells. They're basically spells that are the equivalent of an artifact. They're unique, they're special. There's only probably one of them in the game world, or one in the region, or at least one in the story that you're telling. You can't learn them automatically. You've got to find them, you've got to get them. And so Wish for me is definitely the exact kind of spell that should be a legendary spell. It's under the game master's control. It's not something players can just pick and introduce into the game. There has to be agreement between the players and the game master that we are going to be doing wishes. And once you introduce that element, why not have it be something exciting and open-ended and more open to interpretation? Does that mean Wish doesn't need any guidelines at all? Nope, absolutely not. So what did I do to try and limit the power of the Wish spell? In past, I considered making it cost a certain amount of money, but to me, that's also kind of boring. So again, took a page out of Dragon Ball Z or just Dragon Ball generally, and said, you know what? It should require a quest. So in order to cast Wish, you should fulfill some kind of quest. And the game master is the one who's going to hand out whatever that quest is, either through a divine power that wants a quest completed, through a malicious power that wants a quest completed, or just through the universe itself deciding that fate needs to be a certain way. Or maybe the last dying act of a great hero was to say, you know, whatever hero can accomplish the quest that I failed to, the cosmos will reward them for having achieved this epic event and bend reality to their will afterwards. So it also very conveniently solves the problem of wishing for more wishes, because a wish always comes with a quest. So if you wish for 100 wishes, you just get yourself 100 quests. And now you got to go through the work of doing all those before you get any of those wishes. So I thought that was a clever sort of self-satisfying problem fix for one of the classic abuses of having a wish. I also made a short list of things that you probably should not wish for. Such as wishing for more wishes, and I explain how the quest thing kind of solves that, but you really just shouldn't do it. Also, wishing for anything that is infinite. I wish to never be able to die. Well, that makes it for a pretty boring story. Now, wishing for eternal youth, maybe that's not so bad. Wishing for a certain kind of immortality where you don't grow old, right? That's okay. But like to wish to be for infinite money. What is even infinite money in a world, and how does that work? No infinite things. They need to be finite and discrete wishes, generally speaking. I put in there it's not good to wish for utterly changing reality. Like, I wish the planet was a banana, right? Some prankster player just wants to kind of screw around with the story in the world. That's not really in keeping with the purpose of having a wish in the world. Then it becomes just sort of this weird, I wish there was no friction. Okay, well, how does that work? How does, no, don't do that kind of thing. It should be kind of a discrete thing that you want to happen in the world, and not a change of the world that you live in, particularly. Now, maybe you wish to journey to another world. Well, that would be totally appropriate for Shotgun Fantasy, right? So I did this little outline, and then I talked a little bit about the power that's going to grant the wish, maybe have some motivations, and so the way the wish is going to be interpreted. I put a word limit on the wish. I think I used the 25 words that you can get in the suggestion spell. I think that's a pretty good limit. Just to keep people from bloviating. They write their 10-page wish out. Nobody wants to see that, right? It needs to be a little open to interpretation and not too specific. But having written all these things for the wish spell, I also put in a designer's note. And the designer note says, hey, look, the reason I wrote the spell is for fun storytelling, for creative, dramatic moments that are towards the end of a story arc in which a wish is granted, either to give a player some really cool reward for what they've achieved, or the whole party a really cool reward for what they achieved, or to drive further storytelling and be the resolution of a story arc or the beginning of a new story arc. And just, say, hey, look, as a game designer, this is what I intend. These rules up here, they're good rules of thumb for you to follow to help keep to this intent. But ultimately, like you're only screwing yourself if you abuse this spell and you put it in your game as a contest between how much the GM can screw you over or how much the player can try to ask for. Maybe that's fun for you, but I think it mostly ruins role playing experiences, right? So yeah, so I just put that in that caveat and say, look, I'm just going to trust you players and game masters now that I've given you my best advice to run with it and do your best job. But also feel free, like if you really want a wish to be a contest of wits, go ahead, I guess. Right. But don't say I didn't warn you. All right. So that's what we got about breaking your game. What have I been doing this week? I've been playing Stellaris, mostly just one build, my sort of galactic weeds. I think they're like space trees. Basically, they're a population growth centered empire where I just make as many trees on as many planets as I possibly can. They also have a little bit of a sub theme of like space fauna, like space amoebas and space whales, and using those in my empire to spread my space tree seeds throughout the empire, throughout the galaxy, that kind of thing. Been going pretty good. It's kind of a slow start strategy in a way, but it snowballs. But then the challenge becomes the logistics of keeping your empire going. The space seeding mechanic means you end up with colonies scattered all over the place, so you're facing against many different enemies. But on the other hand, it makes for a very fast expansion. So I've been really enjoying the playthrough. It's been really good, and I've been sticking with it and didn't jump to a bunch of other different races. I haven't gotten to a point where I felt like the game has really dragged down and gotten boring yet. So far so good with those guys. Lots of fun. I think I'm in the year 2300 now, which is sort of like 100 years into gameplay. And I usually have the game set to end at 2500, so 1/3 into the experience. That's actually pretty early for Stellaris. Some people like to set the slider way out in the distance. I kind of like my games of Stellaris to end as soon as possible, and I find past the invasion from outside the galaxy, which is usually known as the Crisis, past dealing with the Crisis, I don't find the gameplay that interesting. So some people still do. That's great for them. Uh, for me, when you've broken the game, when you've defeated the biggest challenge, that's a good time to end it. Life in general, what's been going on? Well, I'm still feeling pretty good, although I will say, I got some slightly challenging financial news. I have a little less money overall in all my accounts than I thought I did. Not a crisis mode, but I feel the pressure a little bit more. Gotta get things happening on Sig Trent games. So yeah, it's good to have a little pressure though, but it does amp up the stress a little bit. And it's led to me putting in more hours of the gift shop. More hours of the gift shop means less hours writing and working on my business. So it's a challenge juggling these things. Guaranteed money versus kind of the dream way that I want to make cash. And you just got to make calls as things go on. Plus, and medical bills come up. Nothing wrong, just kind of like routine stuff I need to do. But my insurance was in a little bit of a weird state, so I'm gonna have to pay for it out of pocket, and that's not great. So be it. I never regret paying people money for services that are well provided and good, so I got no problem with that. Just didn't come at the best of times. That's life. Not complaining about it. Don't need y'all help other than buy cool game stuff that I make. So long as you keep doing that, and we find new fans out there, that's something that always really helps. Not just like any kind of direct support, but to let other people know that it exists, to grow and broaden that audience. Because as a creator, that's the breadth of your audience and the depth of their support are the two main things. And I don't want to be a company where people have to buy thousands of dollars of my product every year. So I'd rather have a big audience than to call on my audience to spend a lot of money. It's just and I want to make it accessible to more people. So that's just more the strategy I want to have. I could use a little bit of a break from the routine. It's been grind on the business, grind at the gift shop, grind a little bit playing Stellaris. That's purely by choice, so I can't complain about that. Fortunately, next week I'm going to go visit Eric from Evil Genius Games and go see my parents in Tacoma. So I'll get out of town and be away from the keyboard for a couple days. That'll probably be good for me. And he's going to stay home. That'll make me a little bit sad, but so be it. She'll be able to get some stuff done and do some streaming. And then, be back to the usual routine. So I think it'll be good to have a little bit of break, but it does mean like all the things that I always trying to make progress on have to sit on the back burner for a little bit. That'll be a little bit painful, but so it goes. So that's my life. Pretty happy, but challenges. But then again, like gameplay, Some challenges are good. Keeps us fresh, keeps us on our toes. All right. So that's going to be it for this week. I hope you guys all have a wonderful time in gaming. I hope your own challenges help you grow and that you can get to the other side of them and declare yourself victorious. If you find a way to break the game of life and just win like crazy, good on you. All right. Well, catch y'all later. Bye-bye.